All right, so this is a basic boot tutorial. Some of you mentioned earlier today that, due to the rigorous activities that we're doing, some of your boots are getting scuffed up, they're getting scratches, they're getting beat up. And so every time you put a layer down, it's basically like polishing a turd. It's only going to be so much. This one I'm not going to go over too much of how to strip the boot because it's honestly going to take too long for you to do tonight, realistically, and to have them dry and to put X amount of layers upon layers of polish that you would need. We'll go over that maybe this weekend, but for now I'll give you just kind of a basic. If you look here, you see that modeling. That's what some of you are talking about. That's the polish that's getting stripped, and it's not laying flat. These obviously look like total garbage because we got beat today. We're going to go over this by the numbers. All right, the first thing that I do when the boots are in this kind of condition, I get a basic kit, okay? You got your standard shoe polish, you got an applicator, you have a horsehair brush that comes with it. So what I like to do, the first thing that you should do, especially after a day like today, get rid of this debris. All this debris needs to come off the boot. So take this, get all that garbage off so that we can start at ground zero with this. The next thing we're going to do once all that debris is off is we take the lid of the shoe polish. I fill it with water, just plain water. Sometimes a little warm water might help, maybe even hot water. Dip the applicator in just a little bit. Get a decent swirl. You don't want too much or too little. Apply it completely around the boot. Now, a lot of people do their boots differently. There's no, absolutely correct way to do it. If your boots look good, they look good. But I routinely get complimented on them, both by the instructors and by cadets as well. All right, so once we have, this is basically what I call the base layer. This is the base. We want a nice base going on. What you want is to fill in these little tiny holes, these little granules that, they're kind of hard to see, but you're supposed to, if you were to look up close, you would be able to see them. We're trying to fill those basically, and every time we go out and get beat, they get eroded from the beat down, from the grass, from the cement. And one more thing while I'm just thinking about it, whenever we get dropped for an exercise or something, if you're not doing it, you should probably do it. Let's say this is the surface of the floor. You want to try to get you want to make sure that the boot actually is protected, so that this buffer is protecting the boot. I know that's easier said than done when you're getting the shit kicked out of you, but try as best you can to get it flat like here, so that you're not actually scraping the surface of the actual leather of the boot. Now, like I said, once the base is a nice coat that you've already applied it with the applicator, you're going to buff it out. Buff, buff, and buff until you get a kind of a sheen, a kind of glossy look to it. It's not, up to the standards of, you're not done yet, but this is pressing this polish into the leather of the boot. It's pressing it in, and it's filling in those tiny cracks and granules that I was alluding to earlier. So keep buffing, buff them completely out, all around the boot. Don't neglect the boot. I see some of you with, the toe looks pretty good, and this just looks like garbage. It looks like ass. If you don't think that they're not looking at that, and they don't think that looks chintzy and cheap, I mean, they do. So take the time, buff it out, make sure it looks good. While you're buffing it out, you'll hear the instructors that say a spit shine, right? So what you're actually doing is, while you're buffing it out, literally spit on it every once in a while, because the idea is you're not getting so much water on it where you're stripping it back off, but just enough to keep it moist so that it's always, it's not getting too much friction. You can kind of see it's already starting to pick back up. All that polish is starting to get pressed into the fibers of the boot itself. The other thing that I use for the finishing touches is a cotton ball usually. I don't have them right now. I do have these cotton squares. It's not quite as good. I'll probably go to Walgreens or CVS or something, pick up a pack over the weekend. But these will kind of do the trick. So what I like to do is kind of flatten it out so that you get a kind of a 90-degree angle to it. You're going to dip a little bit in water. Now this is kind of the hard part how much water do you use? I really don't know how to say it in words. You just kind of got to get a feel for it. But you want it like completely moist without dripping. That's the best way I know how to describe it. And try to get the fibers of the cotton, flat. You're going to swirl it a few times. That looks about right. You're going to apply it all over the leather of the boot, completely over every surface area of the boot, of the leather of the boot, I should say. Work it in, making small concentric circles. All right, so making small concentric circles, you can kind of see little beads of water that are on the surface. That's kind of a good indication of how much water you should be using in general. You don't want to use too much, because if you use too much water, it'll start stripping the boot. And you can kind of see that modeling I was talking about. Eventually, you're probably going to have to strip your boots. I'm going to have to strip my boots eventually. That's just what happens when they get beat up over time. But what we're doing, if you use too much water, that's going to start doing it. It's going to start stripping off, and you're actually like ripping the however many layers that you laid down previously. So if you start seeing it like it turns into like a gritty, grainy, and starts coming up, stop right there, because you're actually stripping it. All right, we're still making small concentric circles. I don't know how to tell you exactly how long this should take, but I would say on average, no more than 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the condition of your boot. Really, I would say. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but you should see like kind of a milky residue. That's too much polish. So that means that needs to get buffed out. Some people seem to stop before there, and they're like, well, I don't really get it. I don't know, and then they just quit. Now, if you're seeing that, that means there's too much polish on the boot or the cotton swab. Now you can see it was nowhere near, but pretty much all of this is going to be gone. That's how you're going to know that you're done, is when this is basically, you just see stains of where the polish was, but it's not the actual polish itself. We'll get to that next. All right, this is a one pass. I'm actually not really happy about this. I'm for the sake of time, because we have an inspection tomorrow and I want to get this video out as quickly as possible, I'm stopping with this boot for the purpose of this video. But I am probably going to go over at least one more time with this boot. You can kind of see the difference though between this boot and this one. This one just had the horsehair brush. This is the one we worked at. Now you can see how this doesn't actually have any polish left on it. This is just stained with polish. But there's no polish really remaining left. And that's really how it should look. It should look flat. And all of the polish has been worked in. And you don't have too much of a milk. Well, this one has a slight milky residue to it. So realistically, I would want to keep going with this a little bit more. But for the sake of time, that's where we're gonna stop. So for the next boot, you're gonna do the same thing, except you're gonna discard this one. This one's done now. You're gonna do the same exact thing. Kind of a 90-degree angle. Boom. Again. You want to make sure the whole thing is completely wet, but not completely dripping either. So something to that effect. If you need to blot it, that's why, a couple reasons why I use the towel. One, to blot it, and two, obviously not to destroy a hardwood floor, especially if you have carpeting. Same thing. Swirl, apply, run it completely through until you don't have a milky residue left, like I just got with that. And then if you want, go a second round to make them really pop. Other than that, that's really all there is. There's no magic to it. You don't need fire. I mean, everybody does things a little bit different, but you don't need fire. You don't need all this trickery. It's just very simple items, and that's all you need. And I promise you, you'll pass the inspection if you do that. Again, next time when we have a little bit more time, we're going to go over stripping the boot, because I'm not too thrilled with the condition of my boot. It's starting to get some surface. I mean, for the sake of it's going to pass an inspection, but it's starting to come up itself. So I'm going to need to strip my boot too. Anyway, that's about it. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.